trauma and the trauma that it's been causing in his life. So the content matter to the production, the little super dope. I really like this track. What is good, HipHop Heads? It is Esteban Xound here with another album review. Before we get into anything, remember to subscribe, comment, like, and share the video. I appreciate everyone who's interacted with the channel, especially everyone who's subscribed to this point, everyone who's hit that big red button. I appreciate that shit. Thank you. And with that being said, I got my green on for this album review. I had to come proper for this one, representing the green, the Philly. With that being said, this is the Meek Mill Championships album review. Going into the album, honestly, I respect Meek Mill as a rapper. I've never been a huge fan of him, but throughout the years, I've always got one or two hyped up bangers that I could slap. I've always gotten something out of Meek Mill throughout the years. Dream Chasers 2 is really when I started listening to Meek Mill. Since then, I've listened to DC3, Dreams Worth More Than Money, DC4, and Wins and Losses. DC4, by the way, is one of my favorite albums from Meek Mill. That shit slaps from top to bottom. Listening to the single that came out, Oodles and Noodles, baby, I was like, okay, this is dope, but I still wasn't anticipating an album. So when I saw the album dropped, again, I was just expecting those one or two bangers that I was gonna get, and I was going to move forward from it, maybe leave most of the album behind. So I was like, okay, let's see what we were gonna get. I wasn't expecting much. So when I first listened to the album, my first impressions, honestly, I was very impressed with what I got. Not because I got more than those two bangers on the album, but I got a fucking cohesive, solid project from top to bottom. Meek sounds hungrier than he's ever sounded. He sounds laser focused on this album. The production, man, I cannot say enough about the production on this album. Honestly, it's one of the best, well-crafted, produced albums, I'm gonna say, in the past couple years. I'm gonna go out on a whim and say that shit. And I know Ross is known for his production on the albums, and I think Meek Mill has learned from that, because the sound on this album is just super well crafted from top to bottom. The only complaint that I had when I first listened to it was that it did feel a bit long. I mean, obviously with 19 tracks, that's natural. So after a few listens, I think I skipped through maybe one or two tracks on the album. And for 19 tracks, for one or two skips, that's pretty fucking good. My favorite tracks, Trauma. Honestly, this is how you start off an album. Meek Mill sounds emotional over this Taking Me Higher sample by Barclay James Harvest.
You know I found a better way. You used to be a dreamer, but you know I found.
My mama used to pray that shit, see me and yell. It's fucked up, she gotta see me in jail. On a visit with Lil Poppy and her, even though I seen it be well. They got a smoker with a kid in my cell.
It's perfectly produced by Don Cannon, and it's one of my favorite instrumentals on the album. Meek Mill is touching on the struggles of the prison and justice system that he's been dealing with, and the trauma that it's been causing in his life. So the content matter to the production, the little super dope. I really like this track. Uptown Vibes, this is how you create a summer smash. Faboulous' verses, his verse wasn't that good, but Anuel sounds dope on this track. Meek Mill sounds hype on the hook. A dope track. And the horns sound like a parade on this track. The that's my shit. This is one of my go-tos on the album. What's Free, the What's Beef by Biggie Smalls, Flip on this track by Tariq Azuz, and Street Runner is exactly what I want to hear with a track with Jay-Z and Ross on it.
The Commission, Uncle Paulie, P. Diddy, Caesar Leo, De Janeiro, Charlie Baltimore, Iceberg Slim, the most shady, Frankie Baby.
Know what free is, nigga?
Ross talks about his status in the game, his history, and he ends this verse by taking shots at Tekashi 6ix9ine. I don't know why the fuck he did that, but I guess he had to just get it off his chest. Meek Mill talks about his prison situation again and some of the positive things he's been doing, and Jay-Z delivers a classic verse on this track. One of my favorites. He's talking about ownership, bad deals that people sign, relationships with other creatives, his relationships with Kanye West and the media trying to pit sides. Obviously, we get a flex from Jay-Z on this track like we usually do on Jay-Z verses. Honestly, this is probably one of the best tracks on the album. This has been getting one of the best responses from the people. Respect the Game, another classic sample. This time, Papa Mitro flips Jay-Z's Dead Presidents, which was originally a sample from Lenny Liston Smith's Garden of Peace.
That we don't touch letters, stack cheddars forever. Live treacherous, all the etceteras. To the death of us, me and my confidants. We shine, you feel the ambiance. Y'all niggas just round.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a dope sample. We've heard it before in hip hop. Meek Mill goes over the codes of the streets, both in music and in the game. And just to hear Meek over this classic sample is enough for me to like this track. Splash warning, honestly, this track was not gonna make the list if it wasn't for this little sound that Future made. And that little sound, it was so stupid that it was catchy. And I was like, okay, you know what, for some reason I like this shit. Don't get me wrong, the instrumental was hype. Meek Mill's delivery, I like his flow on this track. Young Thug's on here as well. So the track, it wasn't bad, but it was that little sound that Future made that just took it over the top. Championships, the samples, once again. Dario flips Tony Fontaine's I Found the Girl.
All the youngins in my hood popping perks now. Getting high to get by, it's getting worse now. You gotta tell them put them guns and them perks down. Them new jails got 10 yards in them, and that's your first down.
It sounds passionate. Meek Mill sounds passionate. He's speaking of coming up from street life and the hood, detailing some of the struggles that him and his homies had to come up from. So I really like the subject matter on this track. And I ain't come here to preach. I just had to say something because I'm the one with the reach. Youngin got a quarter, he trying to turn into Meech. No daddy, he had to learn from the streets. I used to be an honor roll student, damn. Then I turned to a beast. I'm like, god damn, this is what I want to hear from Meek Mill. Tic-tac-toe, this track is a slapper on this album. The instrumental goes, the horn in the back reminds me of the horn from Roll in Peace with Kodak Black and Extentacion. Which is probably why he got Kodak Black on this track. Shouts out to Juan, who really put me on to this track. He was the one who was like, yo, you gotta check this shit out. And I was like, all right, let me listen to it again. Llegué desesperado, gotta care where I go. Oodles and noodles, babies. Again, these beautiful samples that we get on the album. This is easily my favorite instrumental on the whole album. This time, Butter Beats flips Love Changes by Mother's Finest. track really encompasses what the whole album is about. I mean, Meek Mill's flow is precise over this track. Honestly, my favorite track of the whole album. 100 Summers, I agree with Charlamagne the God when he says that you can hear the anxiety on this track. Meek Mill sounds vulnerable, he sounds honest, touching on death in his neighborhood, speaking on it from a real place. You can really feel the fear that he goes through as far as death. With the shits, the instrumental by Seasick, first, it sounds playful, but when these 808s start coming in, that's when I'm just like, okay, this is dope. Melii, she opens up her verse by rapping in Spanish, then she goes to English. She came in so raw. One of my favorite verses on the album. Stuck in My Ways, Cardo, one of my favorite producers out in the game today, provides a dark banger on the album. Meek Mill takes this track to flex, and it's really hyped up. Dangerous, this is a properly executed chick track. The guitar sample sounds smooth on this track by Hitmaker and Christian. The beat is smooth as butter. The way Jeremih and PnB Rock go back and forth is super creative on the hook, and Meek Mill delivers two modest yet creative verses. My least favorite tracks, Going Bad. Honestly, this track from the beginning of it, from the beat to Drake to the hook, the ball to the wall to the money wall. This is not where I wanted this to go. Not fucking with this track at all. I was hoping for like a dope collab that we got before with Rico on Dreams Worth More Than Money, but we did not get that on this track. Almost Slipped. This track sounds confused again from the start. The instrumental isn't bad, but it's just the content matter where Meek Mill's touching on an old relationship. He regrets the relationship, yet he dreams about fucking her. And I'm just like, man, I'm not trying to hear Meek Mill's bipolar love on this album. Not one of my favorite tracks. Overall, out of 19 tracks, for me to dislike 2 tracks, that's one of the best ratios I've ever heard of. Especially when it comes to long albums from artists that I consider B-list lyricists, I don't expect much. So what I got out of this album was way more than I expected. And honestly, this album took the championship for the biggest surprises of this year for me. I really did not expect to like this album, but I really did. If you're watching Meek Mill, I doubt it, but who knows? Continue to make dope street hip hop. We definitely need that shit in the game today. There's definitely a void of it, and I think you fill that void. So continue to do that. Continue to work with the producers that you worked with on this album. They crafted your sound perfectly. I don't know what you guys did when you just locked in, but this sound on the album from top to bottom sounds dope. I continue to rap over these classic samples and these trap instrumentals. Both sides, we get dope verses from you, so really continue to do that. Keep giving up game to the youngins out here, man. When you speak on prison life and the streets, I think people listen. I continue to represent for the people that you represent for, speaking out from your perspective. That's all we ask for. It's super dope to hear. If I was to give this a rating, I'd give this a 9 out of 10. I really fucked with this album. And yeah, that's all I got to say on this one. Remember, if you have not subscribed, comment, like, and share the video. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Esteban Xound on Instagram and Twitter. And that's all I got to say on this one. Peace. Top to bottom.